afternoon and Jai Hind students. I hope that you all are staying well at home and taking care of your family also. Again, I am here to teach you chapter number 2, Socialism in Europe and Russian Revolution. And my topic is Russian Revolution because we have completed half of the chapter which was about socialism in Europe. Now we are entering in the Russian Revolution and I'm going to teach this. Before dealing with this vast topic of Russian Revolution, I just make you people understand about subtopics which you are going to study in this column. First of all, we'll study the geographical status, boundary, economy and society of Russia before 1914. Then we'll study a small upheaval which took place in the history of Russia that is known with the name of Revolution in 1905. Then third, we'll study about First World War and its effects on Russian Empire. Fourth May, we'll study the effects on Russian Empire of First World War due to which the Feb Revolution of 1917 created, which had totally overthrown the monarchy, the Tsar's rule in Russia. Then we'll study October Revolution in 1917 only, coming up to October, which just formed the USSR. So next topic we'll be studying how USSR formed. And when USSR formed, due to the land distribution and the socialist ideologies, civil war created in Russia. The civil war was won by the socialist followers, and then finally at the end we'll study Stalinism and collectivization. With this, now I'm going to open my today's topic. First of all, we have to understand about Russian Revolution, what we called as a Russian Revolution. And then we'll study about the boundaries, geographical status, economy and society of Russia. So, first of all, we have to understand what we called as Russian Revolution. Because when we study history of Russia, we came to know that the fall of monarchy in Feb Revolution, after Feb Revolution 1917, and the events of 1917 till October known as the Russian Revolution. But as I told you in subtopic that on the name of the Russian Revolution we'll study one more that was in 1905. So basically the fall of Tsar's rule in Feb 1917 and the events of October 1917 known as Russian Revolution. Only two this major revolution known as the Russian Revolution. So the point comes here, who was Tsar? Tsar, Tsar. Tsar was the monarch post name in Russia. Russian monarchs were known with the name of Tsar. Like we were calling Mughal emperors as Badshahs. We were calling slave dynasty rulers as Sultans. Maharaja, Adhiraja. So like in Russia, the Tsar was the emperor's post name. And we are talking of fall of Tsar's rule in 1917. So till 1917, the last Tsar who was ruling on Russia was Nicholas II. And during his ruling time, Russian territories were very big and vast. You can imagine by sitting here only, close your eyes and just think that half of the Europe, half of the Eastern Europe to half of the Northern Asia was totally Russia till 1917. So now I'm going to deal with the territories. Which were the territories? My dear student, if you all can see in the slide side column, the map is there till First World War. This map, this is the Russian map. So you can just imagine the territories which I am counting here. In the territories of Russia, including Moscow and St. Petersburg, along with this, the Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, parts of Poland, Ukraine, Belarus, were coming, and the boundaries of Russia stretched from Pacific Ocean to the Central Asian state, by including in the southern areas Mideast countries of today's Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. So this was the vast territory of the Russia. Russian Empire was the biggest empire of those days. Now we are coming to when we are dealing from north, south, east and west Russian boundaries. So we have to understand that one side Russia was connected with the Europe, where Orthodox Christianity, Greek Christianity, which straight away enter in the Russia on the name of the Russian Orthodox Christianity, was present. And the southern side, which was related to the Mideast countries, if you can see Turkey and Mideast countries. So Azerbaijan, it is given here, Armenia, it is given here, Georgia, it is given here. So these areas of Russia, which were touching the boundaries of Mideast countries, their Muslim population was residing. So Russia having Orthodox Russian Christianity along with the Greek Christianity, also Catholic and Protestant group division in the Christianity were also present in the other parts of the Russia. Along with this, Mideast countries boundary of Russia having Muslim residents, and the Russian boundary which was connecting to the China having Buddhist population. So we can see that even Russia, not only the diverse background people were living, even in the religious manner also, people were living in the different religious identities in Russia. One more thing which I missed out, parts of Poland. If you all have studied chapter number 1, you very well came to know that about Napoleon Bonaparte, he got defeated in the Battle of Waterloo. So when he got defeated in the Battle of Waterloo, one of the winning party from other side was Russia. And Russia, as a gift, Poland got Poland at that moment due to the Treaty of Vienna. In the Treaty of Vienna, Poland was given to the Russia, and since from that time 1815 to till 1960s, Poland was the part of Russia. About Russian economy and society, just keep in your mind that Russian economy was a rural economy. And it was a rural economy. Why? Because 85% population of Russia till First World War, not even Second World War also, they were agriculturists. And the higher population of Russia was involved in the agricultural activity, and this ratio was more than any other country of Europe. Even for example in France and Germany, only 40% agriculturists were there. As compared to this 40%, Russia having 85% population involved in agriculture, which says that Russia have big and vast cultivation land for the cultivation. And based on this cultivation and rural economy, Russia was the major exporter of grain to the world. And in Russia, cultivators not only produce for themselves, for their needs, even it was left that much with them that they were selling it in the market, exporting it out of the country also. Means on the basis of the major exporter of the grain, Russia was earning quite well money due to the import and export of the food grain. As I told you, Russia was in rural economy, so 85% Russian population involved in agriculture, so industries were very less in Russia. Till 1914, history gives this proof that industries were in pocket in Russia. Pocket means a shirt having a very much of a cloth and a pocket having a very small cloth covering the shirt area. So similarly, like in a shirt, pocket is there, bilkul same that size. Industries were pocket in Russia, and basically in two major towns of that time, and that was St. Petersburg and Moscow. But including this, one more problem was these industries were the private property. So even laborers who were working here, they were under the custody of private ownership, and government having a very less interference for their rights. Maybe Tsar's government, based on the complaints given up by the laborers, interfering to supervise the industrialists, how they are working, proper wages they are giving or not. They appointed committees, and these committees having their inspectors, area inspectors, those who are frequently entering in the companies to check whether the work is going on properly or not, whether the laborers are getting proper wages or not, and they are getting proper working hours or not. But nobody was considered. Why? Because somehow these inspectors were taking bribe from the other industrialists, and the laborers condition was becoming worsened day by day. They were doing more than 10 to 12 hours of work, and on the name of the accommodation they were surviving in the dormitories. So we came to know, as the size of the industries were very less in the Russia, according to laborers counting was very less in the Russia, and so that not only industrialist, even government was unaware of their problems. And because of this, craft work was much produced in Russia. Handloom work was much produced in Russia. Since it was a rural economy, people were less dependent on industrial production. But it got increased. This industrial production got increased after 1890s, when Tsar started getting funds from the outer industrialists, those who started investing in Russia, because Russia have big and vast Siberian region where they can open the factories. So when Tsar getting funds by the outer MNCs, outer companies, so Tsar had totally extended the railway networks, and he started getting foreign investments to open the industries, and after 1890s only it was possible to open more and more industries in Russia. Talking about industries, so we must have to talk about industrial worker, as we know that there were no solution for their problem, because government was doing their work by making the laws, but these laws were applied on the people, and industries are following all the norms or not. Nobody was there to check it. So based on this, industrialists were playing corruption, and they were making laws within their industry by their own. So when we talk about these workers, we have to understand that workers were divided into social groups in Russia. Social groups means hierarchy. Based on their wages, based on their industrial norms, they have their social classes. It is just like, try to understand, like in Varanasi there are so many schools, small, mediocre one, and a big schools like DPS, Sunbeam, Aryan, and all that. So even teachers having a social classes based on their school in which they are working. So DPS, Aryan, Sunbeam, these teachers are coming on high rank, and other average school teachers are coming on low rank. Why? Because based on their salary and based on their school norms, infrastructure, and the name of a reputation of a school in the society. So the similarly in Russia also, workers were divided into social group, and in the hierarchy, St. Petersburg metal workers were coming. These metal workers were based on their salary, based on their skills. They were coming at the higher rank as compared to the other industrial laborers. Then when we talk about women, only 30% women were employed in the factories, but their salaries or wages were half less than the men salary or wages. These workers were classified within the different social groups on the basis of their wages, their dressing sense, and how the management, their industrial management, made the laws for them. Till 1914, with the social division, all the workers have made the association. When they know that government will be unaware of, not going to take any strict actions against of the private industrialists, so these workers, maybe of hierarchy, high ranked laborers of metal workers association, or maybe textile laborers, maybe women association, these laborers within their industry started making associations. Associations we dealt with the beginning of socialism, that was cooperatives. So they started making cooperatives, they started making unions till 1940, and these unions were what kind of work these unions were doing. They were generally time of unemployment or without any prior information when the dismissal of a workers were there, or for demanding the working condition and living condition. These workers unions were collectively organizing these strikes. The strikes which took place in 1896 and 97 by the textile industries, those who were coming at the low rank workers, these strikes were ineffective for the Tsar Nicholas II. But the strikes conducted in 1902 and 1905 by the metal industry workers were very much effective, and these industrial workers somehow in 1905 compelled Tsar to make one parliamentary form of government below him called as Duma. Okay, so Duma was the parliamentary form of government which was made up by the Tsar's permission in 1905. Now, last topic, talking about peasants and farmers. It's very interesting and it's very dramatic. Really, I'm telling you. Because we know that Russia was a rural economy, and even like industrial workers had made their group, Russia already existing the peasants group since from past history time. So Russian peasants were grouped in a very powerful manner, and Russian peasants were only cultivating most of the lands. Talking about clergy and nobility in Russia, they also too owned a large properties. They have the large properties. On the other hand, they were collecting taxes from the people also. So when talking about clergy, peasants were deeply religious. Maybe they were Christians, maybe they were Muslim, maybe they were Buddhist, but they were deeply religious, so that beforehand they were paying taxes to the clergy with due respect. But as compared to other countries of Europe, even France also, Russian peasant had no respect for nobility, because it was settled in their mind that the nobles are getting salary, power and position by the Tsar. So why to provide them taxes? So whenever these nobilities were entering in the village areas to collect the taxes for the Tsar, and they were demanding for the taxes, their taxes, nobility taxes. So at that moment, Russian peasants who were grouped in the commune or mir, the community peasants, Russian peasants community, village wise they made the community. They distributed the lands amongst themselves, that how much of land who will cultivate this year. And based on the production was already, before socialism existed on the world, Russian peasants were already following socialism by converting themselves into the groups which were called as commune or mir. And these communes were very effective in front of the nobility. Whenever nobility entering in the villages to demand for their own taxes, nobility taxes, these communes were forcing nobility to return back, or they were demanding from the nobility that give your lands to us, will cultivate and will pay you taxes. And when nobility was daringly pressurizing them to pay the taxes, the history gives proofs that in 1902 to 1905, on a large scale in southern Russia, these landlords, nobility were murdered by the Russian peasant groups called as Mir. So hence, when we compare it with the other peasant group of the world, like in France, like in Germany, even like in India, we as zamindars, we as common people, we never stood against of the nobility called mansabdars or subadars. Never ever people objected. But in Russia, because of these peasants groups were very powerful, more than 85% population was busy in the cultivation, they always stood against of the rulers, nobility. They never pay taxes to the nobility, and whenever nobility demanded taxes from them, they in turn demanded from them their land, and if they refused to pay, they were killing, they murdered the nobility then and there. So it was highly dramatic as compared to others. in around the world, what we have read in the history, even in Indian history, that India का सबसे सताया हुआ तबका होता था किसान, even today also. But think of Russia, the situation was totally in the returned manner, opposite manner. Russian peasants were that much powerful that whenever nobility demanded extra taxes from them, they were killing them. It was just like that policemen getting salary by the government, and apart from this, when they were standing on the traffic areas or any other areas, they were demanding bribes from the people. And people, instead of giving bribes to them, they are killing them, they are snatching their salary, and in the government that they are paying corruption. It was just like. With this, I'm ending my content. Thank you. Jai Hind. Goodbye to everyone.